Welcome back to the channel The Coin Empire, where we explore the most fascinating, mysterious, and unbelievably valuable coins ever discovered. And today I am bringing you a story that will absolutely blow your mind because we are diving deep into the legend of the 1978 1-cent USA coin that collectors believe could be worth an astonishing $119 million due to rare errors, shocking mint mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities that transform an ordinary-looking penny into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And before you think this sounds impossible, I want you to imagine holding a simple copper-colored coin in your hand that most people would ignore, toss into a jar, or spend without a second thought, yet hidden within its tiny surface could be a combination of minting anomalies so rare that elite collectors, investors, and numismatic historians would compete fiercely to own it, pushing its value into the realm of record-breaking private sales and secret auction negotiations. Because when it comes to coin collecting, the smallest detail can change everything, and the 1978 Lincoln cent is a perfect example of how production errors at the United States Mint can create history. Now, to understand why a 1978 penny could ever reach such a jaw-dropping valuation, we need to go back to the basics and remember that in 1978 the 1-cent coin featured the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, part of the long-running Lincoln cent series first introduced in 1909, and during the late 1970s these coins were primarily composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, struck in massive quantities at mints such as Philadelphia and Denver, which makes the dates seem extremely common at first glance. But here is where the story becomes extraordinary, because even in years of high mintage numbers there are rare transitional errors, die varieties, off-metal strikes, doubled dies, planchet mistakes, and dramatic mint mishaps that can elevate a coin from 1 cent to millions of dollars depending on condition, uniqueness, and documented authenticity. One of the most powerful possibilities behind a 1978 cent reaching $119 million would be a dramatic doubled die obverse error, a phenomenon that occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned impression during the hubbing process, causing visible doubling in the lettering, date, and sometimes Lincoln's profile. And if such a doubled die were bold and unmistakable, especially if it showed clear separation in the word liberty, the date 1978, and the motto "I in God we trust," collectors would immediately recognize it as a major variety. But imagine if only 1 or 2 examples were ever discovered, perhaps struck early in the die's life before it was replaced, making it an extreme rarity comparable to some of the most famous doubled dies in American numismatic history. Another possibility that could skyrocket the value would be an off-metal strike, where a 1978 cent was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a foreign coin blank, such as a dime planchet, a quarter planchet, or an experimental alloy, and if metallurgical testing confirmed that the composition differed from the standard copper alloy of the year, proving it to be a mint error rather than post-mint alteration. The uniqueness alone could ignite global bidding wars, especially if the coin were authenticated and graded in mint state condition with razor-sharp details and blazing original luster. Now consider the possibility of a wrong planchet transitional error, where a leftover bronze planchet from an experimental batch or a test composition was fed into the presses accidentally, creating a coin that technically should not exist. And because the late 1970s were a time when the mint was exploring cost-cutting measures and alternative metal compositions due to rising copper prices, any documented experimental strike from 1978 would be historically significant, and historical significance combined with one-of-a-kind status is exactly what pushes valuations into 8- and 9-figure territory among elite collectors who view such pieces not just as coins but as tangible artifacts of American industrial history. Another dramatic mint mistake that could justify such a staggering value would be a full brockage error, where one coin sticks to the die and impresses its mirror image onto the next blank planchet, resulting in a coin with one normal side and one deeply incus mirrored design. And if the brockage were complete and sharply detailed on a 1978 cent in pristine condition, it would already be worth a substantial amount. But if paired with another major error such as being struck off-center or on an off-metal planchet, the combination error status would elevate it into an elite category. Because in numismatics combination errors are exponentially rarer than single mistakes. Imagine also a dramatic off-center strike of 50% or more with a full visible date, because collectors place immense importance on the date being readable, and if a 1978 penny were struck far off-center yet retained a crisp 1978 date along with a second overlapping strike from a misfed planchet, you would have a visually stunning mint error that could easily become the centerpiece of any advanced collection. Then there is the rare possibility of a double denomination error, perhaps a 1978 cent struck over another coin such as a previously struck dime or a foreign coin, leaving traces of two designs visible on one planchet, and if authenticated by top grading services and confirmed through microscopic analysis, such a coin would not only be rare but nearly mythical, the type of discovery that headlines major auction houses and attracts international media attention. Condition also plays a crucial role in reaching extreme values because even a rare error must be preserved in exceptional state to command record prices, and if the 1978 1 cent in question were graded at the highest mint state levels with flawless surfaces, full red original color and no contact marks, its desirability would multiply dramatically, since collectors pay massive premiums for top population coins that stand alone at the highest grade with none equal, beyond physical errors. Provenance can transform value as well, because if the coin were discovered in an original sealed mint bag from 1978, or traced back to a former mint employee collection with documented evidence, the story behind the coin would enhance its mystique, and in the high-end collecting world narrative matters almost as much as rarity, as buyers are not only purchasing metal but history, mystery and exclusivity. We must also consider the psychological factor of uniqueness because if a coin is believed to be the only known example of its kind, collectors with immense resources may compete not based on intrinsic metal value but on prestige, the pride of owning something no one else on earth can possess, and when two or more billionaires desire the same unique numismatic treasure, the price can escalate beyond traditional valuation logic, potentially reaching the incredible figure of $119 million. Think about the importance of authentication in this scenario. Because for a 1978 penny to command such a valuation, it would need certification by respected grading authorities, extensive metallurgical analysis, die study, comparisons, and public documentation in major numismatic publications, ensuring that experts across the field acknowledge its legitimacy. And once consensus is achieved that the coin represents an unprecedented mint anomaly, the stage would be set for historic private sales or headline-grabbing auctions. Another factor that could contribute to such an astronomical price is timing. Because markets fluctuate and interest in tangible assets often rises during periods of economic uncertainty, leading wealthy investors to seek rare collectibles as stores of value, and if at the moment of sale there were intense demand for unique American coinage combined with media hype surrounding a sensational discovery, the bidding could soar beyond expectations. It is also fascinating to consider that many valuable coins are discovered decades after their minting, sometimes in inherited collections, old jars, forgotten bankrolls or estate sales, which means that a 1978 penny sitting quietly for years could suddenly emerge as a multimillion-dollar revelation once examined by a knowledgeable eye, and that possibility is what keeps treasure hunters searching through everyday change even today. Furthermore, the cultural power of the Lincoln Cent series adds to its appeal, because Abraham Lincoln is one of the most recognized figures in American history, and coins bearing his image hold emotional resonance as well as monetary significance, so when a rare error involves such an iconic design, the demand becomes global rather than regional. Now imagine the perfect storm scenario where a 1978 cent displays a bold double die obverse, struck on an experimental alloy planchet, exhibiting a dramatic off-center strike with full readable date. Next, 1973 D1 cent coin. Today we are diving into one of the most shocking and mysterious stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that sounds unbelievable at first but becomes more fascinating the deeper you go. The story of a 1973 D1 cent USA coin that some collectors believe could be worth an astonishing $115 million because of its rare errors, unusual minting mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities that surround its creation. And before you dismiss this as impossible, stay with me because the world of rare coins has repeatedly proven that small pieces of copper can carry life-changing value when the right combination of rarity, condition, and mint error align perfectly, and this particular coin comes from the historic Denver Mint facility of the United States Mint, officially known as the United States Mint, specifically struck at the Denver Mint. Identified by the small but powerful D mint mark beneath the date, and while millions of 1973 D Lincoln cents were produced, what makes this coin potentially worth a staggering $115 million is not the standard version you find in pocket change, but the extremely rare error variations and mint anomalies that could have slipped through quality control during production, making one single surviving specimen a legendary treasure in the numismatic world. And to understand how such a simple 1-cent coin could reach such heights, we need to look at the context of 1973, a year when the United States economy was facing inflation pressures, metal prices were fluctuating, and coin production demands were high, which sometimes led to rushed processes and mechanical wear on dies and presses, creating opportunities for rare minting errors that today drive collectors into bidding wars at major auctions. And the coin itself features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the iconic 16th President of the United States, whose profile has appeared on the cent since 1909, and the obverse design carries the inscriptions Liberty and I in God We Trust along with the date 1973 and the D mint mark, while the reverse in that year still carried the traditional wheat or Lincoln Memorial design depending on the era context, and in 1973 the reverse was the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959. But what transforms an ordinary 1973 D cent into a coin rumored to command $115 million is a combination of dramatic mint errors such as double die obverse impressions, off-metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, dramatic die breaks, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and even the rare possibility of being struck on a bronze composition planchet intended for an earlier or experimental issue. And let's begin with one of the most famous and valuable types of errors in coin collecting, the double die error, which occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation process, resulting in noticeable doubling of letters, numbers, and design elements. And if a 1973 D cent were discovered with an extreme and clearly visible double die obverse similar in magnitude to famous double die cents of other years, collectors would immediately recognize its rarity, especially if only one or two examples were known to exist, and doubling on Liberty, or on the date 1973 could create dramatic separation in the lettering, making the coin visually unique and historically significant. And when rarity combines with intense demand among elite collectors, prices can skyrocket into unimaginable territory. And then we consider the possibility of an off-metal strike, which is when a coin is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or composition, and during the early 1970s there were transitional metal experiments due to rising copper prices. And if a 1973 D cent were accidentally struck on a silver dime planchet or perhaps even a foreign coin blank that somehow entered the press at the Denver Mint, the resulting coin would have a different weight, color, and metallic composition, instantly setting it apart from billions of regular cents. And such a dramatic mint error would attract worldwide attention because off-metal errors are among the most coveted mistakes in numismatics, particularly when tied to major production facilities like the Denver Mint. And another powerful factor is condition, because even a rare error coin must be in extraordinary mint state condition to reach record-breaking values. And if this hypothetical 1973 D cent survived untouched in a mint-sealed roll, preserving its original red luster, flawless surfaces, and razor-sharp strike details graded at MS-70 by a leading certification service, its perfection would elevate it from rare to legendary, and condition rarity can sometimes multiply value exponentially, especially when combined with a unique minting mistake that was never meant to leave the mint facility. And collectors are willing to pay unimaginable sums for the finest known example of a coin that carries both historical intrigue and physical perfection. And we must also explore the possibility of a dramatic die break error, sometimes called a cud, where a portion of the die cracks and breaks away, leaving a raised blob of metal on the coin's surface, and if the break occurred near Lincoln's portrait or across the date, creating an unmistakable and visually dramatic feature, and if that die was quickly removed from service, resulting in only a handful of examples, the rarity would become extreme, and the coin would essentially be a one-of-a-kind artifact from a fleeting mechanical failure inside the Denver Mint production line. And now imagine that this 1973 cent also exhibits a broad strike error, meaning it was struck outside of the retaining collar, causing it to spread wider than normal while still retaining clear details, creating a coin that looks almost like a medal rather than a cent. And combine that with a clipped planchet where a curved section of the coin is missing due to improper metal strip punching, and you suddenly have a coin with multiple errors occurring simultaneously, a combination error piece that collectors dream about but rarely ever encounter, and multiple dramatic errors on one coin exponentially increase desirability because they represent a perfect storm of mechanical mishaps that escaped inspection. And history has shown that collectors are fascinated by coins that should not exist, coins that represent accidents frozen in time. And the more unlikely the error, the greater the mystique surrounding it, and beyond mechanical errors we must consider the possibility of a transitional composition error, because during the early 1970s there were ongoing discussions about changing coin compositions due to rising metal costs, and while the Lincoln cent officially remained bronze until 1982, experimental compositions and test strikes were sometimes produced, and if a 1973 cent were struck on an experimental alloy planchet, intended for research or testing and somehow released into circulation, it would represent a missing link in mint history, a coin never meant for the public, and such a discovery would rewrite sections of numismatic reference books, causing collectors and historians to compete fiercely for ownership. And then there is the human factor, the story element that often drives prices into the stratosphere. Because collectors do not just buy metal, they buy stories, and if this 1973 cent were discovered in a remarkable way, perhaps found in an old family collection passed down for generations, or pulled from circulation by a sharp-eyed teenager who noticed something unusual about its color or weight, the narrative itself would fuel media attention, and when mainstream media begins covering a coin story, new investors enter the market, pushing prices beyond traditional collector valuations. And auction houses known for handling rare coins have seen intense bidding wars for coins with compelling backstories, and while we are not referencing any specific auction here, history shows that rare coins with unique traits can command millions when two determined buyers refuse to back down. And now imagine a scenario where only one 1973 cent with this extraordinary combination of doubled die, off-metal strike, flawless condition, and experimental composition is known to exist, certified, authenticated, and confirmed by experts as unique, and wealthy collectors who specialize in one-of-a-kind coins would see it not just as a purchase but as a trophy, a centerpiece for a world-class collection, and in ultra-high net worth collecting circles, trophy assets often transcend traditional price guides, because the value becomes emotional and competitive rather than purely numerical. And another element that could elevate this coin to $115 million is the possibility of it being linked to a major minting anomaly that was previously undocumented, meaning that its discovery reveals new information about production practices at the Denver Mint in 1973, and when a coin changes the historical understanding of mint operations, it becomes more than currency. Next, 2014 D1 cent coin. Today we are uncovering one of the most jaw-dropping modern coin mysteries ever discussed in the numismatic world, the story of a 2014 D1 cent USA coin that some collectors believe could be worth an astonishing $110 million because of its rare errors, shocking mint mistakes, and unbelievable production possibilities that were never meant to leave the mint facility. And at first it might sound impossible that a coin barely more than a decade old could carry such an astronomical value. But when you begin to understand how modern minting technology works, how rare mechanical failures can create once-in-a-lifetime anomalies, and how collector demand explodes when something unique surfaces, you start to see how a single penny could transform into a legendary artifact. And this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, officially part of the United States Mint system and specifically produced at the Denver Mint, which is identified by the small d mint mark below the date on the obverse of the coin. And in 2014 billions of Lincoln cents were struck for circulation, most composed of a zinc core with a thin copper plating, featuring the modern shield reverse design introduced in 2010, and the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. Yet among those billions lies the slim but thrilling possibility that one coin escaped the mint with a combination of extreme mint errors so dramatic and so rare that it stands alone in the world, and in coin collecting, uniqueness is everything, because when supply drops to a single confirmed specimen and demand remains high among wealthy collectors, price ceilings disappear. And to understand how a 2014 cent could theoretically reach $110 million, we must explore the types of errors that could make it one of a kind, beginning with one of the most famous and sought-after mint mistakes, the double die error, which occurs when the working die used to strike coins receives multiple impressions during its hubbing process that are slightly misaligned, causing visible doubling in the design elements. And while minor doubling is relatively common in modern coinage, a dramatic double die obverse showing strong separation in the date 2014, bold doubling in Liberty, and noticeable duplication in I In God We Trust would instantly grab the attention of experts. Especially if the doubling is not machine doubling but true hub doubling confirmed under magnification, and if such a double die were discovered with extreme clarity and no other known examples from that die pairing existed, collectors would classify it as a major modern rarity. And modern double dies with strong visual impact can command enormous premiums when population reports show only one or two known specimens. And now imagine that this 2014 cent also exhibits an off-metal strike error, meaning it was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or possibly even a foreign coin blank that accidentally entered the striking chamber. And while quality control at the Denver Mint is highly advanced, no industrial system is completely immune to error. And if a Lincoln cent were struck on a dime planchet or perhaps on a copper alloy experimental blank, the weight and metallic composition would immediately differ from standard zinc cents, creating a dramatic and measurable anomaly. And off-metal errors are among the most coveted mistakes in modern coin collecting because they represent a fundamental breakdown in the minting process. And if only one confirmed 2014 cent exists struck on the wrong planchet, especially if the strike details are sharp and fully legible, the coin would be considered unique, and uniqueness in the Lincoln cent series, one of the most widely collected coin series in the United States, creates a bidding frenzy unlike almost any other numismatic category. And beyond double dies and off-metal strikes, there is the possibility of a dramatic multi-strike error where the coin was struck multiple times by the dies without being properly ejected from the collar, creating overlapping impressions of Lincoln's portrait and the shield reverse, resulting in a surreal and visually stunning piece that looks almost like abstract art stamped into metal. And multi-struck coins with full dates visible are especially valuable because they combine chaos with clarity, allowing collectors to see the production error while still identifying the coin's origin. And imagine a 2014 cent that was struck once normally and then rotated and struck again off-center, producing ghosted images and doubled lettering in a way never before documented for that year. And if the coin somehow escaped the mint's inspection systems and entered circulation before being discovered, its story alone would fuel massive attention. And story is a powerful driver of value in the coin market because collectors do not just purchase metal, they purchase history and narrative. And when a coin carries a tale of mechanical failure, survival, and rediscovery, it becomes a symbol of chance and rarity. And another potential factor that could elevate this coin to $110 million is a transitional composition error, because although the Lincoln cent had been composed of copper-plated zinc since 1982, the Mint constantly experiments with metal compositions to address rising material costs and durability concerns. And if in 2014 experimental planchets made from a different alloy were being tested behind closed doors and one was accidentally fed into the production line and struck with standard 2014 dies, that coin would represent an unintended transitional piece never meant for release. And transitional errors are legendary in numismatics because they reveal hidden chapters of mint experimentation. And if laboratory testing confirmed that the metal composition of this 2014 cent differed significantly from standard cents, proving it to be struck on a test alloy, its importance would skyrocket overnight. And then we consider die break errors, where cracks form in the die due to stress and fatigue from high-speed production, and modern presses strike coins at astonishing rates, which increases the possibility of die deterioration if not caught early, and a massive die break creating a raised cut over part of Lincoln's head or across the shield design could produce a coin unlike any other from that production run. And if the die was immediately retired after only a few strikes, the number of examples would be extremely limited, and a population of one known specimen would send shockwaves through the hobby. And another spectacular possibility is a full brockage error, where a previously struck coin sticks to one die and impresses its mirror image into the next blank planchet, resulting in one normal side and one incuse mirrored side. And full brockages are dramatic and visually unmistakable, and if a 2014 descent were discovered with a full obverse brockage, showing a recessed mirror image of Lincoln's portrait, while the reverse remained normal, the coin would instantly become a showpiece at major conventions and auctions, and combining that with pristine mint state preservation would elevate it even further, because condition plays a crucial role in determining final value, and modern coins rarely survive in perfect condition if they circulate even briefly. So a 2014 D-era coin graded at the absolute top of the scale, with flawless surfaces, blazing red luster, and razor-sharp strike details, would be exceptionally rare, and when grading services label a coin as unique and none finer, collectors interpret that as an opportunity that may never appear again in their lifetime, and in ultra-high-end collecting circles, wealthy individuals compete not only for investment but for prestige. And owning the only known 2014 descent with a combination of doubled die, off-metal strike, multi-strike, and brockage errors would make the buyer part of numismatic history, and prestige collecting often pushes prices beyond logical guidelines because emotional value overtakes price guide estimates. And then there is the factor of media exposure, because if news outlets begin reporting that a penny worth $110 million has been discovered, attention from outside the coin hobby floods in, and investors who previously ignored coins begin to see them as alternative assets, and when new money enters a small market, valuations can climb rapidly, especially for unique trophy pieces, and provenance would also matter greatly, because if the coin were discovered in a sealed bankroll preserved since 2014 and authenticated by experts, its originality would be unquestioned, and authenticity is everything in high-value coin transactions, and extensive documentation, metallurgical analysis, and die study would confirm that the coin is not altered or counterfeit but a genuine mint-produced error, and once certified by a respected grading service and placed in a tamper-proof holder, the coin's legitimacy would allow it to be offered at elite auctions, and in such environments bidding wars can escalate quickly when two determined collectors refuse to lose, and $110 million becomes possible when ego, prestige, and rarity collide, and we must also consider the possibility of a dramatic missing clad layer error. Because although cents are copper-plated zinc, plating errors can occur, and if a 2014 descent were struck on a planchet missing part of its copper plating. Last 1984 1-cent coin. Today we are diving into a truly astonishing story that proves once again that even the smallest coin in your pocket can hold unimaginable value, and in this episode we are exploring the legend of the 1984 1-cent USA coin that some collectors believe could reach an unbelievable $105 million because of its rare errors, dramatic mint mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities that make it one of the most fascinating modern-era pennies ever discussed. And at first glance, the 1984 Lincoln cent looks completely ordinary, featuring the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with the inscriptions Liberty and I in God We Trust along with the date 1984, and on the reverse the Lincoln Memorial design that had been in use since 1959. But beneath that ordinary appearance lies the potential for rare minting anomalies that could transform a common circulation coin into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. And this coin was struck under the authority of the United States Mint during a period of significant transition in coin composition because just 2 years earlier in 1982 the cent changed from primarily copper to a zinc core with a thin copper plating, and that transition alone opened the door for unusual composition errors, wrong planchet strikes, and experimental metal mishaps that could produce extremely rare varieties. And when we talk about a 1984 cent potentially being worth $105 million, we are not talking about an ordinary example pulled from a bankroll. but about a coin that exhibits an extraordinary combination of mint errors, condition rarity, and historical significance that together create a perfect storm of desirability, and one of the most famous and important error types associated with 1984 cents is the doubled die obverse, particularly dramatic examples where the doubling is clearly visible in Lincoln's ear. Sometimes referred to by collectors as the doubled ear variety, and while some doubled die 1984 cents are known and collectible. Imagine a specimen with even more extreme doubling than previously documented, showing bold separation not only in the ear but also in the date and lettering, creating a visually striking coin that stands apart from all known examples. And if die studies confirm that this was a unique die pairing with no other surviving coin struck from it, that coin would instantly become a population of one rarity. And population 1 coins in the Lincoln cent series attract enormous attention because the series itself is one of the most widely collected in American numismatics, and when millions of collectors pursue a set and only one coin exists with a particular dramatic error, the value ceiling becomes unpredictable, and beyond doubled dies we must consider the possibility of an off-metal strike. Especially during the early years of zinc cent production when leftover copper planchets from 1982 or even foreign blanks might have remained in the minting environment, and if a 1984 cent were accidentally struck on a solid bronze planchet rather than the intended copper-plated zinc, laboratory testing would reveal a higher weight and different metallic composition, instantly marking it as a transitional error, and transitional errors are among the most prized coins in history because they represent the overlap between two eras of production. And if only one 1984 cent were confirmed to be struck on the wrong metal with full details and brilliant mint state preservation, collectors would recognize it as a historic mistake never meant to enter circulation, and then imagine that this same coin also exhibits a dramatic off-center strike where the design is shifted significantly but the full date remains visible, because off-center strikes that retain the date are highly desirable, and combine that with a broad strike where the collar failed to restrain the coin, causing it to expand beyond normal diameter. And suddenly you have a coin with multiple mechanical failures occurring simultaneously, and multiple error combinations are exponentially rarer than single errors because the statistical probability of 2 or 3 independent malfunctions happening to the same coin is incredibly low, and in numismatics low probability equals high value, and we also need to consider die break errors, where stress fractures develop in the die during high-speed production. And in the 1980s mint presses were operating at tremendous speeds to meet demand, and if a die cracked, severely creating a large cut across Lincoln's portrait or the memorial columns on the reverse, and if that die was removed quickly resulting in only a few surviving coins with that feature, the rarity would be extreme, and dramatic cuts that alter the coin's appearance in a bold and unmistakable way often become famous among collectors. And if the 1984 cent in question displays a massive die break never before recorded in numismatic references, its uniqueness would draw immediate interest from experts in grading services, and authentication would be crucial because a coin valued at $105 million would undergo intense scrutiny including metallurgical analysis, die state comparison, and microscopic examination to confirm that the error occurred during minting and was not the result of post-mint damage or alteration. And once authenticated and encapsulated by a respected grading service with a designation such as unique or finest known, the coin's marketability would expand globally. And we must also talk about condition rarity because modern coins often circulate heavily, and a 1984 cent found in average circulated condition would not command record prices even with minor errors, but a coin preserved in pristine mint state red condition with blazing luster, flawless surfaces, and razor-sharp strike details graded at the absolute top of the scale would be incredibly rare. And modern zinc cents are especially prone to spotting and deterioration, so finding a perfect example free from zinc bubbling or plating issues is already difficult, and when perfection meets uniqueness the price potential multiplies dramatically. And consider also the possibility of a dramatic blockage error where a previously struck coin adhered to one die and impressed a mirror image into the next blank planchet, resulting in one normal side and one incuse mirrored side. And full blockages are spectacular because they clearly display the minting malfunction in a way that is visually undeniable, and if the blockage occurred on the obverse, creating a recessed mirrored Lincoln portrait, while the reverse remained sharply struck, the coin would become an instant showpiece at conventions and auctions, and if that blockage were paired with double die features or wrong planchet composition, the combined effect would create a coin unlike anything documented for 1984. And another extraordinary possibility is a multi-strike rotated error where the coin was struck once, normally, then partially ejected and struck again at a different angle, producing overlapping images and rotated design elements. And rotated multi-strike errors with full visible dates are among the most dramatic modern mint mistakes, and collectors are drawn to coins that look almost surreal because they capture a frozen moment of chaos inside the minting chamber. And speaking of the minting chamber, we must remember that every coin struck in 1984 passed through machinery operated and maintained by humans, and while the United States Mint maintains strict quality control standards, no industrial process is completely immune to error, and occasionally a malfunction escapes inspection, entering circulation and waiting quietly to be discovered years later. And the discovery story itself can add immense value because collectors are inspired by coins found in ordinary circumstances that turn out to be extraordinary treasures. And imagine a 1984 cent discovered in a sealed bank wrapped roll untouched since the mid-1980s, pulled aside because it looked slightly different in color or weight, and after careful testing and expert evaluation it is revealed to be a one-of-a-kind transitional off-metal double-die blockage multi-strike specimen in flawless condition. And news of such a discovery would spread rapidly through coin forums, trade publications, and mainstream media, drawing attention from wealthy investors and collectors who previously overlooked modern pennies. And when outside capital flows into a niche market, prices can escalate rapidly, especially for trophy pieces that are unique, and prestige collecting plays a major role at the highest levels of the hobby because ultra-high net worth individuals often seek assets that combine rarity, historical intrigue, and bragging rights. And owning the only known 1984 cent with a spectacular combination of mint errors would place the buyer into numismatic history permanently, and price becomes secondary to legacy when two determined collectors compete for the same unique artifact, and $105 million becomes theoretically possible when emotion, ego, and exclusivity converge. And we also must consider die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring partial design elements onto the opposite die. And if such a clash were dramatic and left visible impressions on the coin combined with other errors, the visual complexity would increase. Desirability.